Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Man at YouTube with another model video. We'll be reviewing another vintage Japanese kit in the very strange 1:88 scale motorized Leopard, which retails at 100 yen. I cannot find a lot of information on this online, so I dub it the 100 yen model kit. Just a very cheap thing that would be sold at lolly shops and toy stores, whatnot, convenience shops at the front counter of supermarkets, that sort of thing. They rarely come across, and I find that since they're so hard to find online, it's very worthwhile documenting. They do get shipped around the world, obviously, and somehow came into someone's collection at $2.25 in Australia. If this is interesting in any way, be sure to check out the Type 74 tank of the same vintage scale and brand. You'll find out that the body, hull, as well as the tracks are exactly the same, and all they really change is the turret and cannon, meaning you can put out a maximum amount of toys utilizing the very same molds. This led that the tank in question never resembled the actual tank, that you'd get a drawing of it on the front cover and a few very crude bits of detail, though in the hands of a kid to quickly snap it together and start free rolling it didn't matter too much, as it never was intended to be marketed for scale modelers. However, being a part of history, there needs to be documentation of it. And over the years and decades, once these models completely vanish from the market, no one's ever going to even know they existed. Now, being such a cheap product where we're recycling molds and using as little parts as humanly possible, if not exactly the same, the decal sheet covers all sorts of access subjects. Extremely crude at this stage, definitely not usable, even though it is a water slide. Universal motor that we see in many toys, though due to age the tension has died in the spring. Attempts to repair the other ones were absolutely pointless. The scale and proportions definitely wrong, as mentioned, mostly to fix the runners in a box. Instructions are printed on the inside to follow, though to my surprise the plastic is moulded in a very thick consistency. You can tell that the moulds are starting to give way, or not quite tooled just right, as quite a bit of spillage is coming out of the seams, leading to very, very large flash marks, though tooled in a way that it snaps together and fits exceptionally well without any sort of glue, and coloured to be appropriate to be enjoyed with kids without anything being reasonably too small that won't be fun to play with, as well as won't really break. I think with age the tension reel did snap while winding it up, though I assume during the time it would have been perfectly fine. Definitely love the fitting, but it's absolutely unreal how the metallic bits or the engine fits all together to make the working mechanisms run. It did get it to run, though unfortunately didn't film it until the tension in the spring died. Where the biggest problem lies is some of the imperfections, where there's very heavy sink marks and other areas that won't look good if painted, though to be fair they're not really going to be painted and the kids aren't going to be that miffed. So what I did was outlined the issues with a marker and left notes every time I came back for this build, what to sand, what to fix up, and filled it with a polyester putty to eat into the plastic and sand back later. Finer imperfections were just dealt with Mr. Dissolved Putty. Another advantage of doing explorational builds like this is I'm not really held down to historical standards or high level modelling standards or anything. Just displaying the profile and the sheer basic Spartan outline of the design I can experiment in a few areas in the process of building and fixing things that are a fair more complex in repairing imperfections, as well as test new products such as paint, masking methods, products, and pump out a tutorial or two. So even though they may be silly in a review sense, they're quite beneficial to the running of the workshop, as well as just really wanted to buy it and build it. So after continually filling in very, very deep sink marks, finally gluing it together as I don't want it to come apart again, some of the seams were definitely off due to the nature of different parts tooled for different versions, and just checking and test fitting was practically non-existent for something that you're going to produce, pump and throw out in the market. A lot of these repairs were not that difficult with the various uses of different putty work. With the final layer of putty applied, sanded back and the turret stuck together, I pulled out some Girls and Panzer decals from the decal bin and was able to appreciate a lot of the more modern kits we do have at our disposal, and really appreciative to be in the current age of the hobby we're in right now. Immediately splashed it with some Tamiya primer to look for any imperfections and final touch-ups. Not too picky, rolled straight into painting. A lot of the previous putty work was done quite nicely and hasn't re-sunk or caused any problems. This process will definitely be remembered for future troublesome builds. A second layer of Tamiya primer, and we went straight into base coating. Nothing fancy, no shading, just straight colours and an opportunity to test masking putty. It goes under various names, Vallejo, Panzer putty, whatnot. Found it to be a bit troublesome to use, but in the way that it just sprawls out and hugs detail quite closely where bleeding is near impossible, it does shift to the point where the layers have to be very quick if you're doing more than 2 layers, or you're going to get a bit of overlap. Overlap did occur, though luckily due to the colour combination it wasn't that much of a big deal. I just have to remember in what layers of colour that I'm using where overlap will be important, and black being a middle colour looked quite appealing. Colours were very close to proper military uniform camouflage, correct for the period, time or army, not 100% sure. Visually pretty happy, definitely turned out how I want it to look, so something more serious can be attempted on other builds. Would be very good for larger scales than a very, very tiny 72nd Braille scale. The paints were generally airbrushed via lacquer and done in a few coats. I think next time I'll just have a few airbrushes lined up and spray them one after another. Once dried, decals were chucked on, bit of a clear coat and a layer of wash with being quite playful in the weathering department. Touch of pigment, a touch of filtering, a little bit of pencil work and a couple of final coats of SMS clear matte to get a very nice definition set going. I struggle a bit with surfaces that are very, very plain, camouflaged with contrasting colours, and getting the weathering just right where it pops in the right areas, be very, very dark and very, very light, with the dark just disappearing and the light areas being felt overdone. So that was a nice bit of testing and playfulness that I definitely enjoyed being a guinea pig project. Small details were painted, the rubber around the wheels, the track links and the normal burnt iron, some sort of screen or light at the very front of the turret. The decal scheme was also very underwhelming, so I found some German crosses, a bit of an interesting number plate on very junky decals I had at the bottom of the decal bits box, and it spruced it up in a way that it's visually interesting with everything coming together quite nicely. for just a very fun, playful build and filler content for the channel. Its obscurity and interest has made for very unique content, a memorable build which may not be interesting to others or modelers with a much higher standard of detail and proportion thumbing their nose. Regardless, it's something that's out there in the community, the catalogue, and definitely worth sharing in some capacity to someone out there. Regardless, I've enjoyed the different experience and what it had to offer, had fun, very pleased with the results as well as the experiments applied to it and the effort that came out. Definitely pops better than slapping it together in its plastic glory or using those god-awful decals. So it happily sits in my 72nd, 76 collection, even though it's way out of the ballpark. It is what it is. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content, especially on tanks, armor, that sort of thing. Very big interest of mine, and content will continue to roll out as I'm interested. Catch you guys next time. Stay tuned for weekly content as well as stuff regularly posted on Facebook, McConaughey. See you all later.